At 65, Marcus Allen finally speaks with the calm of a man who no longer fears the consequences. For decades, fans believed they knew the story. The Heisman winner, the Super Bowl MVP, the elegant runner whose stride looked like poetry on grass. But behind the glory lived a darker truth, one the Raiders spent years keeping in the shadows. A truth built on power resentment and a silent war that never officially appeared in any playbook. His fall from grace was never about age or performance. It was never about the team moving on. It was about something far more personal, something so deep that even teammates whispered about it only in private. Marcus Allen became the center of a conflict that rewrote his life, a conflict with roots far older and far sharper than anyone imagined. Now, at 65, he reveals 6 hidden truths that expose the power struggle inside the Raiders organization. Truths that explain why a legend found himself benched during his prime. Truths that reveal what was lost behind closed doors where cameras never reached. Truths the franchise hoped would stay buried forever. Because this is not just a story about football. This is a story about pride control and the cost of crossing the wrong man. And once you hear these 6 truths, you will never look at Marcus Allen's career the same way again. To understand the magnitude of what happened to Marcus Allen, you must return to the beginning, long before the whispers, the benchings, and the silent exile. Marcus Lamar. Allen grew up in San Diego, a quiet and disciplined kid whose early coaches said he carried a sense of purpose that felt older than his years. At the University of Southern California, that purpose turned into dominance. He became a transcendent star, the kind who could shift a game with a single step. By the time he won the Heisman Trophy, his future seemed pre-written. The league saw him as a once-in-a-generation runner with balanced vision and a strange calm in chaos. The Raiders drafted him into a world unlike any other. Los Angeles in the early 80s carried a restless energy. The team reflected that energy. They were built on swagger defiance and ruthless competition. Their identity came from intensity. Their heartbeat came from one man, Al Davis, a charismatic figure whose belief in absolute control shaped everything around him. Davis valued loyalty and obedience. He valued players who fit his system. He valued power most of all. At first, Marcus Allen fit the vision perfectly. He became the elegant counterpoint to the Raiders' violent style. His step was smooth, his cuts invisible, his patience almost unsettling. Teammates described him as an artist surrounded by brawlers. Fans saw him as royalty. Broadcasters called him the future of the franchise. In 1983, when he delivered one of the greatest Super Bowl performances ever recorded, it felt like destiny fulfilled. But greatness often carries a heavy cost. Inside the building, tensions were quietly forming. Success created expectations. Expectations created pressure. Pressure created fractures. Marcus was becoming bigger than the team brand. Bigger than what Al Davis believed any player should become. His relationship with the organization shifted from partnership to caution. Then from caution to friction. Eventually, that friction would grow into an unspoken war. This was not the story fans saw on Sundays. On the field, he remained the same smooth force gliding through defenders. Off the field, the walls were beginning to close. The same building that once celebrated him now watched him with suspicion. The applause grew quieter. The conversations behind closed doors grew louder. Something was changing, and everyone felt it, even if no one dared say it aloud. By the time the conflict fully surfaced, the fate of Marcus Allen had already been decided. The public would hear excuses about system changes, about depth charts, about football decisions. Behind those excuses lived something far more personal. Something that would redefine his career forever and fuel the 6 hidden truths he now reveals at 65. To understand the 6th hidden truth, you must look at the moment where everything quietly shifted. It did not happen during a game. It did not happen during a press conference. It happened in a boardroom, away from cameras where decisions were made long before they reached the field. Marcus Allen had become the type of star the league loves. Clean image, national attention, commercial deals, endless praise. It was the kind of fame that expands beyond a franchise and becomes its own gravitational force. And that was the problem. Al Davis wanted to build stars, but he wanted to own them. He valued individuality only when it served the empire he created. When it grew too powerful, too independent, it became a threat. The tension began when national sponsors started approaching Marcus more often than the Raiders themselves. He was becoming a face of the league. He was becoming the polished contrast to the Raiders' outlaw identity. Fans loved it. Broadcasters loved it. Marcus embraced it. Al Davis did not. The sixth truth is simple. The relationship broke the moment Davis felt overshadowed by his own player. The reason behind the fracture began with pride. Davis had built the Raiders brand from nothing. He had protected it through controversy, relocations, lawsuits, and endless battles with the league office. He saw himself as the protector of the shield. He believed no player should rise above the system. Marcus was rising anyway, and he wasn't asking for permission. That uneasy feeling grew into resentment. The emblematic moment came during a late-season event when a major sponsor publicly highlighted Marcus Allen without acknowledging Al Davis or the Raiders organization. It was a harmless oversight to outsiders. It was a personal insult to the man who built the franchise. Davis felt his authority had been challenged. He felt the spotlight had shifted. He felt control slipping through his fingers. That feeling stayed with him for years. The symbolic turning point happened in the team facility. Davis confronted Marcus with cold questions. Why so many outside appearances? Why so much attention? Marcus answered calmly, unaware of the invisible line he had crossed. He believed success should be celebrated. Davis believed success should be owned. Their worlds collided in silence. That moment changed everything. Marcus noticed a subtle shift. Conversations cooled. Decisions about playing time grew confusing. Praise turned into polite distance. What once felt like partnership now felt like evaluation. The walls began to close around him. Coaches avoided explanations. Teammates whispered about what was happening. No one said it aloud, but everyone knew the relationship had fractured at the highest level. The cold truth is this. Marcus Allen never gained back the trust he lost that day. It was not about performance. It was not about age. It was about power. From that moment forward, Al Davis no longer saw him as the face of the franchise. He saw him as a reminder of a spotlight he no longer controlled. And for Marcus Allen, that was the beginning of a silent battle that would shape everything that followed. To the outside world, the decision to bench Marcus Allen looked like a football move. Coaches explained it with vague phrases about rotation game planning and personnel packages. Analysts, lacking real information, created theories about age and decline. Fans asked why a former Super Bowl MVP, still capable of changing a game with one touch, was suddenly on the sidelines. None of the explanations made sense. That is because they were never meant to. They were built to hide the truth. The fifth hidden truth is this. Marcus Allen was benched not because of performance, but because of politics. The decision came from above long before the coaching staff drew up their game plan. The message was simple. Reduce his role. Keep him in the background. Let time erase him from the spotlight. It was punishment delivered silently, disguised as strategy. The reason behind the fracture felt similar to many power struggles in sports history. When a star becomes too big, the organization feels threatened. Marcus was still productive. Practices showed it. Teammates knew it. Defensive coaches admitted he remained one of the most difficult players to stop. Yet each week, his name slid lower on the depth chart. The contradiction between ability and usage was obvious. And that contradiction pointed directly to where the real decision came from. The emblematic moment of this truth came on a Monday night. The Raiders needed a spark. The crowd was flat, the running game stagnant. Commentators openly questioned why Marcus had not touched the ball. But on the sideline, the atmosphere was colder. After a stalled drive, Marcus approached the offensive coordinator and asked calmly if there was anything he could do. The coordinator hesitated, glanced toward the owner's box, then replied with words that said everything without saying anything. "It's not up to me." Marcus understood. The benching was not tactical. It was intentional. The symbolic turning point happened when younger backs, less experienced and less talented, were consistently given opportunities ahead of him. Marcus supported them publicly. He carried himself with grace. His professionalism never wavered. But privately, the pain deepened. He knew he could still help the team win. He knew his skill had not faded. Yet he watched others take the field while he stood on the sideline, waiting for a door that would never open. The cold truth. The benchings were not punishment for what Marcus did wrong. They were reminders of the power he no longer had. They were attempts to shrink his presence. They were messages delivered in silence meant to humble him without ever saying his name aloud. It was a strategy to make fans move on and to make Marcus accept a role he never earned. To casual fans, the contract dispute between Marcus Allen and the Raiders looked like a textbook negotiation problem. A star running back wanted a new deal. The team hesitated. Reporters framed it as a standard disagreement over years and dollars. But inside the organization, people knew it was far more personal, far more calculated, and far more damaging than any headline ever captured. The fourth hidden truth is this: the contract dispute was never about money. It was a tool, a weapon used to control Marcus Allen and remind him of who truly held power. The reason behind the fracture started years before the public ever heard a word about contracts. After Marcus became a national figure, the Raiders felt they were losing ownership over his image. When a player becomes bigger than the system fights back. Al Davis believed in an iron structure. He believed loyalty flowed upward, and he believed no deal should ever empower a player more than the franchise. Marcus's rising value challenged everything he built. The contract dispute became the perfect battlefield. The emblematic moment came during negotiations when Marcus's agent presented numbers that reflected his performance and market value. Davis did not argue the statistics. He argued the principle. He questioned whether Marcus should be the one setting the market. He questioned whether the organization needed to make a statement. That statement was clear. No player, no matter how talented, should dictate terms to the Raiders. Davis wanted control. Marcus wanted fairness. Collision was inevitable. Behind closed doors, the tone grew colder. Meetings were canceled. Messages were delivered indirectly. Delays piled up. Each stalled negotiation was designed to send one message. Marcus was replaceable. Marcus was no longer central to the team's identity. Marcus needed to accept whatever terms were offered. It was less a negotiation than a test of submission. And Marcus refused to bend. The symbolic turning point happened when the Raiders presented a contract structured to limit his leverage. It offered security but stripped away status. It rewarded loyalty but punished growth. Marcus saw it for what it was: a long-term plan to keep him under organizational control while minimizing his influence. For Davis, the contract was a leash. For Marcus, it was a cage. The cold truth. The dispute was never meant to be resolved fairly. It was engineered to break him or push him out. It was a message wrapped in legal language. Play by their rules or lose your place. Marcus did neither. He held his ground even as the consequences grew heavier, even as his playing time shrank and the narrative twisted against him. The contract dispute was not a disagreement. It was a declaration of war. By the time the tension between Marcus Allen and the Raiders reached its peak, the conflict had already moved far beyond strategy, beyond personnel decisions, and beyond contract language. It entered a new phase, a phase where embarrassment became a tool, a phase where silence was replaced with small, deliberate actions that cut deeper than any speech could. The third hidden truth is this: Marcus Allen's public humiliation was not accidental, emotional, or reactionary. It was planned. The reason behind the fracture gained force when the organization realized Marcus was too respected, too admired, and too poised to be undone by typical methods. Benching him in private had not erased his presence. Limiting his role had not erased his reputation. Fans still loved him. Broadcasters still praised his intelligence and poise. Teammates still felt his leadership. So the punishment changed shape. If they couldn't remove his talent, they would try to remove his dignity. The emblematic moment arrived on a national stage. During a televised Raiders game, Marcus remained on the sideline for long stretches while the offense struggled. Cameras repeatedly panned to him. Commentators questioned his absence. Viewers at home wondered if the coaches had forgotten he existed. But inside the building, the decision had been made long before kickoff. Keep him visible. Keep him silent. Let the world see him waiting without explanation. It was humiliation packaged as a football decision. The symbolic turning point came during a late-season press conference. A reporter asked why Marcus was not being utilized. The head coach, clearly uncomfortable, offered a rehearsed answer about other directions and fresh looks. Behind him, the team's spokesperson handed out a statement that framed Marcus as a fading player past his prime. Marcus knew the statement was false. The team knew it was false. But the public could not prove otherwise. The goal was not to convince. The goal was to create doubt. The humiliation deepened when the Raiders released a depth chart that placed Marcus behind players who had barely touched the field. It shocked fans. It shocked analysts. To Marcus, it revealed everything. He understood now that this was not about football. It was a narrative shift. The franchise wanted the world to believe he was no longer essential. They wanted to weaken his legacy so that the conflict looked justified, and they wanted him to feel powerless. But Marcus refused to break. Each week, he showed up early. He practiced harder than players half his age. He answered questions calmly. He carried himself with professionalism, even as the organization chipped away at his identity. This resistance only increased the pressure applied to him. The quieter he stayed, the louder the humiliation became. The cold truth. The public shaming was not meant to punish his performance. It was designed to erode his influence. It was a slow, calculated effort to reduce a legend into a role player in the eyes of the world. It was intended to make the fans forget who he was and make Marcus question what he had left. But instead of breaking him, it forged something far stronger. And that resilience is what made the next hidden truth inevitable. As the conflict deepened, something more chilling than benchings and public humiliation began to unfold. It was subtle at first, almost invisible to outsiders, but unmistakable to anyone inside the building. Coaches avoided eye contact. Meetings ended abruptly when Marcus entered the room. Film sessions shifted in tone. Conversations that once included him now continued without him. The second hidden truth is this: Marcus Allen was frozen out by the Raiders in a way that was systematic, deliberate, and understood by every person in the building. The reason behind the fracture intensified when Marcus refused to publicly lash out. The organization expected frustration confrontation, a quote they could weaponize. Instead, Marcus responded with professionalism, and that made the strategy harder to justify. So the freeze-out became the new tactic. Instead of confrontation, they used absence. Instead of punishment, they used isolation. The hope was that Marcus would eventually walk away on his own. The emblematic moment came during a game week preparation. Each position group received updated game plans. Running backs gathered around their coach, who reviewed the scripts for the first 15 plays. Marcus sat in the front as he always did, but that day, there was nothing listed for him. Not one carry, not one pass, not one blocking assignment. The page might as well have been blank. When he asked about it, the coach said quietly that the decisions came from above. That was the moment Marcus understood he was no longer part of the team's competitive vision. He was a placeholder, a symbol kept on the roster, but erased from the future. The symbolic turning point happened during a team meeting when the coaching staff reviewed film. On the screen, they repeatedly highlighted plays where other backs had struggled, missed holes, missed blocks, missed reads. In years past, these moments would have been opportunities for Marcus to lead, to teach, to elevate his teammates. But now, each time a moment arose where his guidance would have been natural, the coaches simply moved on. They were erasing his influence as much as his role. The freeze-out extended beyond the field. Invitations to leadership sessions stopped arriving. Younger players were quietly advised to avoid seeking his mentorship. Suggestions he made were politely ignored. It became clear that the isolation was not accidental. It was strategic. Remove his voice. Remove his presence. Remove the possibility that anyone might take his side. Marcus had been part of the team for years, but now he walked the facility like a visitor. The coldest moment came when the team prepared for a crucial division matchup. Normally, veteran leaders delivered messages before kickoff. Marcus had given many of those speeches in the past. That week, the staff handed the responsibility to a second-year player, skipping over Marcus entirely. The message was unmistakable. His leadership was no longer welcomed. His presence was no longer valued. His legacy was no longer acknowledged. The cold truth. The freeze-out was designed to make Marcus irrelevant long before he left the field. It was not about his ability, which remained undeniable. It was about control. The Raiders wanted to ensure that when he finally walked away, he would leave alone, without allies, without influence, and without a voice that could challenge the narrative. But instead of disappearing, Marcus endured. And that endurance led directly to the most important revelation of all. By the time the final truth took shape, Marcus Allen had endured years of quiet punishment. He had been benched, minimized, humiliated, and isolated. Yet he remained steady. He refused to lash out. He refused to quit. He refused to give the organization the emotional reaction it seemed to want. But the Raiders were not finished. The first hidden truth, the deepest and most defining of all, is this. Marcus Allen was pushed out through a betrayal so deliberate and so personal that it left him no choice but to walk away from the franchise he once believed he would represent forever. The reason behind the fracture traces back to the one thing Marcus never expected the organization to weaponize: his future. After years of tension, he believed the worst had passed. He believed the relationship had reached a cold but manageable standoff. But the Raiders had a different plan, one that would seal his fate. They refused to release him. They refused to trade him. They refused to play him. They locked him in a purgatory designed to wear him down until he broke. Marcus was too valuable to let go, yet too threatening to allow on the field. That contradiction created the perfect trap. The emblematic moment of this betrayal came when Marcus learned that the front office had quietly blocked multiple trade offers from teams that wanted him. Coaches from other franchises had called, privately expressing interest in giving him a fresh start. Some teams even presented deals generous enough to help the Raiders. Yet each time a deal appeared, the Raiders dismissed it without consideration. They preferred to hold him hostage rather than let him succeed somewhere else. For Marcus, this was the moment the conflict became unforgivable. The symbolic turning point happened during a conversation between Marcus and a longtime staff member who pulled him aside and whispered a truth he had suspected, but never confirmed. The Raiders were intentionally waiting out his career. They aimed to drain the remaining years of his prime without ever giving him a meaningful role. The goal was simple: ensure that when he left, he would leave diminished. Ensure that the world remembered him as a fading star rather than the complete player he still was. It was a calculated erasure of his greatness. The final betrayal came when the Raiders attempted to restructure his future in a way that made returning impossible. They offered him a role so small, so symbolic, that accepting it would have been an admission that he no longer belonged on an NFL field. It was an offer made not in good faith, but as an exit strategy. They wanted Marcus to walk away so they could claim he chose to leave. They wanted the story to end on their terms, not his. The cold truth. Marcus Allen did not leave the Raiders because he wanted a new chapter. He left because the franchise made staying unbearable. They boxed him into a corner, denied him opportunities, rejected every path to redemption, and built a wall around the very identity he spent years crafting. The betrayal was complete, but so was Marcus's resolve. Leaving was not surrender, it was liberation. And only after escaping that shadow could he reclaim everything they tried to take from him. Long before the public recognized the depth of Marcus Allen's conflict with the Raiders, one person inside the locker room understood the full scale of what was happening. He witnessed the benchings. He saw the meetings Marcus was excluded from. He recognized the quiet suffocation that surrounded him. This teammate, a respected veteran with his own history in the league, carried a truth that only now begins to surface. The bonus hidden truth is this. Someone close to Marcus saw the entire downfall unfolding and tried to intervene, but fear kept him silent until the damage was done. This truth begins with the bond the two shared. They had trained together, studied film together, carried each other through wins and losses. The teammate admired Marcus's calm strength, his discipline, his refusal to break under pressure. But as the tension with the front office grew, he saw something shift. Coaches avoided Marcus. Plans were altered without explanation. Decisions that defied logic became normal. The teammate noticed every detail, and each detail added weight to a truth he did not want to accept. The symbolic moment happened during a team meeting when Marcus was deliberately skipped in a leadership discussion. The teammate watched the room go silent. He understood exactly what it meant. Marcus was being erased. Afterward, he approached Marcus privately and said the words Marcus never forgot. "They're not letting you back in." It was the first honest acknowledgement he had heard from anyone inside the building. But fear held the teammate back from speaking publicly. Fear of losing his job, fear of being the next target, fear of challenging the structure that controlled their futures. And by the time he finally spoke up, Marcus was already gone. The cold truth. Someone could have helped him. Someone knew the truth all along. But in the world Marcus lived in silence was survival. To understand the legacy of Marcus Allen, you must look beyond statistics, beyond awards, beyond the graceful runs that defined his prime. His story is not simply about yards gained or touchdowns recorded. It is about the collision between talent and power, between ambition and control, and between a man who carried himself with dignity and an organization that slowly stripped it away. The 6 hidden truths reveal a deeper narrative. Marcus Allen became a symbol of what happens when greatness threatens authority. The journey began with promise. A Heisman winner stepping into a franchise known for its rebellious spirit. A star who seemed perfectly matched with a team built on identity and intensity. To fans, the combination looked unstoppable. But inside the walls of the organization, something else grew. Marcus's elegance contrasted the Raiders' hardened image. His rising fame threatened the structure Al Davis spent decades protecting. The initial friction between player and owner became the seed of a silent war. The early years masked these tensions. The victories made it easy to ignore the hidden fractures. His Super Bowl performance became one of the most iconic moments in league history. He became the face of the franchise to millions watching from afar. But behind the celebrations, a quiet resentment simmered. Each national commercial, each headline, each interview, where Marcus's star shone brighter than the team itself, deepened the divide. Davis had built the Raiders' empire, and he struggled to accept that another man had become its center of gravity. As the conflict escalated, the tactics against Marcus grew more personal. The benchings, the silence, the humiliation, the freeze-out. Each step chipped away at his place within the team. Each step rewrote the narrative in the eyes of the public. What fans did not see was the accumulation of personal wounds beneath the surface. Marcus endured them with a calm exterior, but every action taken against him left a mark. These marks would shape how he remembered the franchise and how the franchise remembered him. The height of the conflict came when the Raiders blocked his escape. Teams across the league saw the writing on the wall. They knew Marcus still had years of greatness left in him. They reached out, hoping to rescue a legend from a situation that made no sense. But the Raiders refused every offer. They did not want him, but they also did not want anyone else to have him. The cruelty in that decision revealed everything. Marcus was trapped inside an organization that saw him as a threat long after he stopped being a star on their field. The betrayal was complete when they offered him a role built not to utilize him, but to diminish him. It was a final attempt to write the ending of his story on their terms. But Marcus refused to let the Raiders define him. When he finally left for Kansas City, something remarkable happened. Freed from the politics that suffocated him, his career reignited. Fans saw flashes of the runner he had always been. Teammates saw leadership that had never dimmed. The league saw a man who had been held back, not worn down. And the Raiders saw the truth they had tried to bury rise again on another field wearing another uniform. The cold truth lies at the heart of his legacy. Marcus Allen did not become a legend because of the awards he earned. He became one because of the adversity he carried. His career became a testament to endurance. His story, shaped by the 6 hidden truths, tells us that greatness is not only defined by the glory of victory, but by the strength to survive the darkest corners of the sport. In the end, the feud between Marcus and the Raiders became larger than any play or statistic. It became a defining chapter in the history of the franchise and a turning point in the life of a player who deserved better. Marcus Allen emerged from the shadows of betrayal with dignity, and the years that followed proved what the Raiders tried to bury could never stay hidden. His legacy was not erased. It was reborn. The story of Marcus Allen is more than a tale of conflict. It is a reminder that even the greatest careers can be shaped by forces the public never sees. His journey from superstardom to silent exile and finally to redemption stands as one of the most complex and compelling sagas in NFL history. And now that the truths he carried for decades have finally come to light, the question turns to you. Which of these 6 hidden truths changed the way you see his legacy? Was it the silent freeze-out that took place behind closed doors? Was it the calculated benchings? Was it the betrayal that kept him trapped when he still had greatness to give? Or was it the moment he broke free and proved that no franchise, no conflict, and no power struggle could rewrite who he truly was? As you reflect on his story, consider how many other legends lived through battles the world never knew. How many careers were shaped not by age or decline, but by politics and pride. And how many voices were silenced long before they had the chance to reveal their truth. If uncovering these hidden layers of the game gives you a deeper appreciation for the players who shaped football's golden age, make sure you stay with us. Like the video, leave your thoughts below and tell us which truth struck you the hardest. And if you want more stories that go beyond the highlights and dig into the rivalries, betrayals, and defining moments of the sport, subscribe to NFL Hidden Truths, because the legends of the past still have much to say, and we are here to reveal the stories the league hoped you would forget.